Okay, let's dive into something really cool today. We're talking about a fascinating, maybe even audacious challenge.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
How do you take a regular six-string guitar, with all its complex, noisy harmonics, and just instantly make it sound exactly like one of those massive, old-school analog keyboard synths?
Right, like a Moog or an ARP.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. You've got to do it without any modern digital stuff. No modeling, no computers, no fancy MIDI pickups, just pure analog signal processing.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's a tall order. But, the amazing thing is the answer didn't pop up recently. It came way back decades ago.
Really?
Yeah, from Electro Harmonix. They built this thing called the microsynthesizer, or just microsynth.
The microsynth, I've definitely heard of that
Oh,
one.
yeah. It wasn't just clever. It was like a real turning point for effects pedals. It's still seen as this major benchmark, an analog solution to a problem most people now would probably throw digital tech at.
So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to really get under the hood of that original microsynth. Let's unpack the design thinking, the sheer circuit cleverness EHX pulled off back in the late 70s.
Right. We want to figure out what kind of electronic magic they were using to get those sounds.
And also understand why this pedal, which is kind of known for being difficult, right? Why it's still so sought after nearly 50 years later.
Exactly. It's got this cult classic status for a reason.
Okay, so to really get it, we need to transport ourselves back. Picture it, 1978, 1979.
Oh, yeah. The era of massive synth rigs.
Totally. You had Moog, ARP, Oberheim synths everywhere. They were like the sound for prog rock, funk, early electronic stuff. Everyone wanted that huge, thick sonic power.
But those things were monsters. Huge, complicated.
And crazy expensive, right?
Absolutely ruinously expensive. So EHX, who are always pushing the envelope, they saw this huge gap in the market.
Yeah.
The microsynth was basically their attempt to sort of democratize those synth sounds. Let guitar players, bass players too, get that same kind of sonic weight and complexity, but from their pedal board.
That makes sense. But the technical challenge must have been immense.
Oh, huge. Because they had to figure out how to take this organic, fluctuating guitar signal and somehow turn it into a stable, predictable synthetic waveform. And do it instantly, with no lag.
So this wasn't just like the next fuzz pedal after the Big Muff.
Not at all. The Big Muff is basically just really intense distortion, right? This was EHX saying, okay, we're going to build an alternative to a keyboard synth, but for guitarists.
Wow. They were really planting a flag. Like, this is the guitar synth frontier. And it was a pretty much empty territory for stompbox makers back then.
Totally. And that kind of ambition, well, it needed way more than simple circuits. The whole idea behind the microsynth is that it's a multi-stage analog circuit. It's designed to sort of mimic the building blocks of a big modular synth.
So it doesn't just like filter your sound.
No, it actively generates entirely new synthesized pitches based on your guitar signal.
Okay, how on earth did they cram what sounds like a whole synth setup into a foot pedal? What was the big technical problem trying to turn a guitar signal into something clean and synthy?
Right, well, this is where the genius and also the difficulty comes in. The absolute biggest headache for any analog guitar synth is getting stable pitch tracking.
Because a guitar string has all those extra harmonics and fluctuations.
Exactly. It confuses the heck out of simple pitch followers. So EHX tackled this head on. The very first stage inside the microsynth is all about wave shaping.
Wave shaping.
Yeah. Your guitar signal first gets slammed through a really heavy distortion circuit, like a fuzz. But this fuzz isn't just there to sound aggressive. Its main job is to clip the signal really hard, smooth it out, basically try and force it into something resembling a square wave.
So they're making a basic synth waveform out of the guitar's messy signal. That's the first building block.
Precisely. Once they have that cleaner, more predictable square wave, then they could feed it into dedicated analog pitch circuits, the suboctave and the octave up.
Okay.
And these weren't just simple harmonizers. They generated stable, synthesized tones exactly one octave below and one octave above your note. So you got the fuzz, which is also the wave shaper.
Got it.
The suboctave voice, the octave up voice, and then you can blend in your original dry guitar sound too, all mixed together.
Okay, that definitely explains how it gets that really thick, layered sound. But I gotta ask about the actual physical pedal. The originals were huge, right? Big metal box.
Oh yeah, massive. Took up a lot of pedal board real estate.
And the thing that always jumps out at me, it needed mains power. Like, plug it into the wall, 110V AC power. That's nuts for a pedal.
It is pretty unusual, yeah. like the old deluxe memory man.
Why? Why did this complex analog circuit need wall power when almost everything else ran off a battery or a small adapter?
That power requirement is actually a really big clue about what's inside. It tells you EHX just couldn't run this thing properly off a standard 9-volt battery.
Not enough juice.
Exactly. You've got multiple complex analog stages, op-amps, filters, oscillators. They all need stable voltage and preferably higher voltage for better headroom. Running it off 110 VAC let them step that up internally.
So higher internal voltage.
Right, which meant all those circuits could handle the loud signals in complex waveforms without getting noisy or sagging or clipping too early. It needed that consistent, strong current to keep everything stable and, quiet enough to actually work as a synth.
So the giant size and the wall plug weren't just for looks. They were direct results of trying to stuff high-voltage, high-headroom synth circuits into a pedal.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
A necessary evil for the sound they were chasing.
Okay, let's shift from the chunky exterior to the control surface. Those 10 sliders on the front panel, that's where all the sound shaping happens, right? It looks complicated.
It is. That's where you sculpt the sound. And you're right, before you even touch the filter section, you're basically balancing 4 separate internal sound sources.
4 voices.
Yeah. Those first 4 sliders, suboctave, octave up, square wave, and guitar, they're like volume knobs for the 4 main sounds the pedal generates or passes through.
Okay.
So say you want that really deep, gut-rumbling synth bass sound. You probably kill the octave up and guitar sliders and really push up that suboctave.
And the square wave slider that controls the volume of that heavily clipped fuzzy signal you mentioned earlier, the one that's kind of the core synth tone.
Exactly right. That square wave isn't just plain old distortion. It's the fundamental tonal fingerprint of the microsynth. It gives you that buzzy, slightly nasal, hard edge texture that just screams analog synth.
Right.
That's what really separates it from just being a fancy octave fuzz. And then by balancing that square wave against the dry guitar slider, you decide how much of your original guitar tone stays in versus how much pure synth tone takes over.
Makes sense. But the microsynth does more than just static tones, doesn't it? It can do swells and dynamic stuff. Which brings us to the attack delay slider. That seems like such a clever feature.
It really is a stroke of genius.
How does slowing down the start of the note mimic what keyboards do?
Well, think about hitting a key on a synth pad or an organ sound. Often the sound doesn't just blast out instantly, right? It swells in gently.
Yeah, like a volume swell.
Exactly. The attack delay does the same thing for the synthesized parts of the microsynth sound. It uses an envelope circuit to suppress that initial loud pluck of the guitar string and makes the volume of the octaves and square wave kind of bloom upwards gradually.
Okay.
So if you set that attack delay slider higher, you can get these gorgeous, warm, sustaining pad sounds. It completely changes the feel of the guitar, makes it sound like a string machine or, an organ.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Okay, and then the final piece of the puzzle, maybe the most expressive part, is the filter section. This gives it that kind of vowel-y talking quality.
Yes. This is the dynamic heart of the sound, really. It's a resonant low-pass filter. Low-pass means it cuts off high frequencies.
Right.
But the resonant part is key. And it sweeps the filter cutoff frequency move up or down based on how hard you play.
And the filter resonance slider controls?
Yeah.
What exactly?
Resonance is like, imagine shining a super bright, focused spotlight on the exact frequency the filter is allowing through at that moment. It boosts that specific frequency, making it peak sharply.
Okay, so when I hear that wah or my talking sound, that's the resonance cranked up, making the sweep really obvious and peaky.
That's it, exactly. Low resonance gives you a subtle, smooth sweep. Crank the resonance high, and you get those sharp, almost metallic singing peaks. That's crucial for getting like classic acid bass lines or really aggressive synth leads.
And then the filter sweep start and stop sliders, they just define how far that sweep travels.
Precisely. They set the floor and ceiling for the filter's movement.
Yeah.
To control how low the ooh sound goes and how high the he sound goes when the filter sweeps in response to your playing dynamics.
Wow. Okay, so when you put it all together, blending those 4 voices, using the attack delay for swells, and then shaping it all with that sweeping resonant filter, I can see how you get such a massive range of sound.
Huge range, yeah, from those deep, growly synth basses.
Right, using the suboctave and
To
resonance.
those slow, evolving organ-like pads with the attack delay.
And those really famous biting octave fuzz leads that almost talk back at you because of the filter sweep.
That's the magic. But we do have to come back to the big warning label on this thing.
Uh-oh.
It's sensitivity. Every source, everyone who's used one says the same thing. It rewarded, or maybe demanded, really careful playing technique. What does that mean practically?
It means, well, you generally couldn't just strum chords wildly.
Right. Bad idea.
Yeah, usually. If you did, the pitch tracking would often glitch out, the octaves might warble or disappear, the filter could get confused, it could turn into a mess of unpredictable noise pretty quickly.
So single notes were key.
Absolutely. To get those classic microsynth sounds, you really had to play clean single note lines. Consistent picking attack helped a lot too. And often, rolling your guitar's tone knob back a bit helped clean up some of the high-frequency stuff that could confuse the tracking.
That's such a critical point. It demanded discipline. It reinforces that idea that the microsynth wasn't just another stomp box you step on and forget. It was almost an instrument in itself.
Yeah.
Its sensitivity kind of forced players to adapt, to play in a more precise, almost synthetic way to really unlock its potential.
Which makes sense, given its goal. Now, considering how complex and maybe fiddly it was, it's interesting to think about where it sat in the EHX lineup back then.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly aimed at the same crowd as, say, the Big Muff or the Small Stone Phaser.
Right, those felt more like mainstream rock tools. Where did the microsynth fit?
It was definitely part of their more experimental or pro line. It sat alongside other pretty complex analog boxes like the frequency analyzer ring modulator or the polyphase phaser.
Ah, okay. The weird stuff.
Pretty much. Pedals aimed more at studio guys or musicians really looking for serious sound design tools, not just standard guitar effects. It showed EHX was really serious about pushing what a pedal could be.
Thinking about it that way, maybe its closest relative, at least in concept, wasn't another dirt box, but maybe the Electric Mistress flanger.
That's a great comparison, actually, yeah. Because the Mistress took this huge, complicated studio effect tape flanging and somehow managed to distill its essence into a pedalboard-friendly, high-headroom analog circuit.
And the microsynth did basically the same translation job, but for the analog keyboard synth.
Exactly. And look at its staying power. The pedal has had incredible longevity. Those original late 70s units, they're rare, sometimes noisy, definitely fragile, but super collectible now.
Then they reissued the big box later, right?
They did, in the 90s, I think. And then, really importantly, they brought out the smaller, more modern Exo Series version in the 2000s. They even made separate tweaked versions for guitar and bass.
And the fact that the basic design, those sliders, the core analog architecture, survived through all those different versions really says something.
It absolutely does. It's a testament to how powerful and, frankly, how right they got the core concept back in '78. It stayed in production in some form longer than almost any of those other early weird EHX pedals.
Which really cements its status, doesn't it? It's not just a quirky piece of history. It's still seen as a genuinely powerful and unique synth tool.
That's the final word, I think. Today, the microsynth is still kind of a yardstick. You see lots of boutique builders trying to make perfect, glitch-free digital synth pedals.
Yeah, tons of them now.
But that raw, sometimes unpredictable, slightly wild sound of the original analog microsynth and its complex multi-stage design, that's still the benchmark that whole category of effects often gets judged against.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the big takeaways here. 4 key reasons the microsynth is still so important, right?
That sounds good.
First, it was way ahead of its time. A proper non-MIDI guitar synth back in the late 70s. That's huge.
Definitely. Second, the sheer sonic range it offered by packing, 5 distinct analog processes, fuzz shaper, sub, octave up, filter, envelope into one box.
Right. Third, it proved there was a real appetite among musicians for complex, sometimes challenging, but ultimately unique analog sounds. It wasn't just about simple distortion.
And finally, its incredible longevity. The fact that we're still talking about it and EHX still makes versions of it proves the genius of that original design.
Absolutely.
You know, that longevity makes me think about something else, kind of a final thought to leave people with.
Oh, yeah.
Given that the microsynth is famously sensitive, kind of hard to dial in perfectly, and really makes you work for the best sounds.
Yeah, it demands a lot from the player.
Right. So what is its enduring success despite those challenges? Tell us about what musicians really value. Is there something about that untamed, demanding nature of certain analog gear that makes the sounds you finally do wrestle out of it feel more special, more unique?
That's a really interesting question. Is the struggle part of the appeal, the idea that not everyone can just plug in and get that sound?
Maybe. Is that tension between the complexity, the difficulty, and the undeniable sonic reward? definitely something to ponder when you think about perfect digital copies versus raw, sometimes difficult analog magic.
An excellent point. Perfect digital versus complicated analog power.
Okay,
Right.
well, that was our deep dive into the Electro Harmonix microsynthesizer, a true piece of synth history hiding in a big old metal box.
Go find some demos online if you haven't heard it.
Definitely. Now go explore those resonance sweeps.